Right, I'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. PTRC 6-2024, Monday, June 24th, 2024. I'll read the land acknowledgement. The City of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of Credit First Nation. There are many nations, Métis and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wide stewardship on the lands in which we live. Is there any declarations of interest today? I see none.
No.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? Moved by Rich and second by Deborah. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? That's carried. All right, adoption of minutes from 5.1 PTRC 5-2024 from May 6, 2024. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes? Sean, and a seconder is Rich. Thank you. All those in favor? Oppose? That's
Aye.
carried. All right, so correspondence. These are also open for any questions, discussions, if any members have any. Just 6.1 PWCS 37-2024, the Exotic Car Show Concert Fundraiser Special Event Request. At their meeting on May 7th, 2024, Council approved the request to host an Exotic Car Show concert at the Battle of Beaver Dams Park on August 24th, 2024, and $4,000 of special event services from city staff. Anybody have any questions? Any further comments on it? Seeing none? Okay. Item 6.2, PWCS 56-2024, Battle of Beaver Dams Park Lighting Project. At the meeting on May 28th, 2024, Council passed a report concerning the lighting of Battle of Beaver Dams Park and awarded the contract for the project. Just going to ask everyone to mute their microphones if possible. Thank you. Item 6.3, PWCS 572024, turf field locations. At the meeting on May 28th, 2024, Council passed report PWCS 57-2024 concerning turf field locations. Council approved Rolling Meadows as their site for the turf field and for staff to continue work with the District School Board of Niagara and the Niagara Catholic District School Board. Any comments, questions with the, no? Okay. Item 6.4, we have the strategic plan 2024 to 2027 and beyond. At their meeting on May 28th, 2024, Council passed the strategic plan 2024 to 2027 and beyond. I believe that was part of the agenda. The strategic plan was included with the agenda. Okay, so everyone's had a chance to, okay. I'm sure we can review it through the summer and it can come back if there's any questions or clarifications, because item 7, the selection of a vice chair. So I will now pass over the next part of the meeting to Justin, our legislative assistant.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the next section, just pull up my screen. Okay, for the next section, calling for nominations for committee vice chair. So I'll now call for nominations for vice chair. Is there any nominations? Or anyone interested in the position? To put it that way too.
Hi, Justin. This is Peter.
Yep.
I'd like to nominate Marsha Coppola.
Okay.
I was going to nominate Peter.
Well, we could do both. Marcia, are you even interested in it?
Can we both do it in case one of us isn't there?
No, it just calls for one vice chair.
Peter, do you want to do it?
Marcia, I really think you would make a great vice chair, and it gives us some diversity on the chair and vice chair piece as well. So I think it would make really, I would really support and encourage you to do that.
I would accept the nomination. Darn you.
Is there a seconder for Marcia nomination? I've got Joe Atkinson. I'll call now a second and third time for nominations for vice chair. Is there any additional nominations for vice chair? Seeing none. Can I get a mover and a seconder to close the nominations for vice chair? Can I get a mover? I've got Jeff. And
I can second.
Second, Peter. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. So, since there's only one nomination, please join me in congratulating Committee Vice Chair Marcia Kupla. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats, Marcia. You're going to have to come in here and sit beside me one of these nights.
I will when I don't. One of these nights I will.
Maybe we'll wait till the fall.
All right, so now with that, I'll pass it back over to Committee Chair Daniels.
Great, thank you. All right, committee business. So item 8.1, parking improvement at Gilgordon Park. This was brought up prior to our break. We didn't really have many agenda items. We did quickly discuss with now Rolling Meadows being put in the mix for the turf field, but any discussion? Sean, do you have anything?
Yeah, I gather there's going to be a lot of overlap with, as you just mentioned, the turf field getting approved there. I hope this isn't going out of scope, but a lot of the frequenters of the Gilgordon Park tend to park on the road, and now with additional traffic calming measures, the stop sign and no parking in front of the park, it's become a little bit hazardous. I'd like to see people get off the road and be able to enjoy the park with a dedicated parking area.
So maybe that can be directed. So Jacob, do you have any sort of I know it's really early in the planning phases for the park or anything, but do we understand or know of any scope that would be dedicated towards the parking?
I did, and I still do.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I think maybe Jeff might be turning his camera on because I think this might be better suited for him, perhaps.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the new turf field at Rolling Meadows will involve a public information center, at least one, to see if we can address some of the issues that are currently being experienced and might arise as a result of putting in an additional facility there. The site itself will accommodate at least 60 new parking spaces. However, if there's a chance to address some of the on-street parking issue, we could make it bigger. At the moment, the parcel of land we're looking at is of sufficient size to.
I know. You're in my way now. I have no power here. It's been a long time coming.
I'm sorry. So I guess the short answer is yes, we will address the parking issue at Gilgordon Park as part of this process, and we'll get the full input from residents living and using that facility at the moment.
Great, thank you. Any other discussions with Gilgordon Park? I know there's going to be a lot of overlap, so I don't expect too many further questions, but if there is any. Seeing none, right? Item 8.2. So this was the expressions of interest for James White Arena. Jacob and Brooke, I'm gonna pass this over to yourselves.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Oh, Joe, I see you now with your hand up.
My apologies. I was at another meeting and got here just as you were asking whether anyone had any conflicts. I do have a conflict on this issue since one of the expressions has got my name on the bottom of it.
I see that. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Justin, is Joe allowed to stay in the room while we discuss the?
Yeah,
I'm assuming yes.
So yeah, through the chair, I discussed this with Joe, and yeah, he's allowed to remain in the meeting. You just can't vote on the item.
Right. I know different committees have different rules, I guess, depending on what it is. So, okay, great, thank you. I'll pass it now over to Jacob and Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to kind of give a brief, I guess, background before I kind of start going through these things. And sorry, I believe everyone's met Brooke at the last meeting, I think, if that's correct. But just to kind of give a brief outline, we were tasked with kind of taking on an expression of interest for the James White Arena. As probably most of you know, it's the second arena over by the Doherty Arena at our downtown Thorold Arena. It's been empty for a little bit of time since Public Works and Community Services Department have moved back into their permanent building over at 1543 Beaver Dams Road. So kind of the purpose of this expression of interest was just to get a general idea, see what groups were interested in using the arena and try and ultimately lead to determining a future use of it. So myself and Brooke will kind of just walk through quickly each organization that did submit an expression of interest. Most of these did submit it on the formal expression of interest form that we had out there for submission. A few where I'll kind of go through them a little bit and break them down, kind of more so just followed up with an email that was a little bit more brief, but we still included them just to kind of get a better idea of a larger sample of people that were interested. Brooke, do you want to add anything kind of before I start going through, or do you think that kind of catches everything?
No, I think you covered it. I think that Jacob started this process, so I kind of jumped in the middle of it. So I'm going to let him speak to it, but I did help with kind of the navigating and the discussions with Jeff and Dave and Jacob. So if I can answer anything, I will try.
Awesome, thank you. So just to start, the first one, and I don't know if everyone should have this, Justin attached this to the presentation as well. So Justin, I don't know if you want to maybe share this on the screen so everyone can kind of follow along as I'm walking through, if that's helpful for everyone. So the first one, Thorold Community Activities Group, name of the contact over there, Megan Gilchrist. What the proposed use is that they have basically reached capacity over at their current facility over on Richmond Street. So they're proposing that they take the space to kind of use for additional programming space. So what this could include through them, child youth recreation, sports classes, kind of would work fairly well with what we have over there for a large open space. So proposed uses include some basketball, floor hockey, soccer, badminton, tennis, a few different sports like that. And then as well as some adult recreation uses. So fitness classes, potential for racket sports, league sports, and then possible gym equipment as well. And just to kind of tell everyone how the several different columns of criteria we have, we were asked to kind of use a couple different columns of criteria and kind of figure out how this different proposed uses would align. And then from that, we kind of got a bit of a scoring matrix. So just kind of going through this, we scored it based on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 being the weakest correlation, 5 being the best correlation. Here we've got a 5 for aligning with Parks Trails Recreation Master Plan, 4 for Thorold resident participation. Thorold Community Activities Group, obviously being a Thorold group, has a majority of Thorold residents. Reliance on municipal staff. This group was really just looking for kind of a space that they could kind of take over and use. We're making a couple assumptions here. Thorold staff would probably still be opening and closing the building, providing some light janitorial, maybe, cleaning the washrooms, cleaning the facility from time to time. Overall organizational structure, the Thorold Community Activities Group has a board. They have a very formal structure. They have full-time staff, part-time staff as well included. And then compatibility with existing city-run sports or city-run or sponsored programs. Thorold Community Activities Group is really one of those groups that provides a lot of services and programming to the citizens of Thorold. So overall, we said this correlated very high and that they are very well compatible. And that kind of gives us a score of 23 total for them. Since everyone kind of knows a bit of the kind of general structure of those columns now, I'll probably breeze through a couple of the other ones a little bit lighter and kind of allow people to kind of, look at the columns and see the scores and totals, but maybe more focusing on the staff analysis here, just because that's kind of us kind of going back and forth with the group, asking some additional questions that maybe weren't captured. Marcia, I see your hand up. I'll just get to you 1 second here. But overall, for the staff analysis for the Thorold Community Activities Group, the multi-use floor is able to accommodate additional programming with the TCAG. That's one floor proposed use that we have to be putting down there. So multi-use floor, kind of a hard rubber surface for flooring. And I'll let Brooke speak to this one a little bit greater in detail in a second. But TCAG also has their own administrative staff. They can have kind of the structure and staff able to provide programming, and other things they were looking for in the building kind of included a little bit of storage or office space that would benefit them, but that wasn't exactly something that was a make or break deal for this group. Marcia, I saw your hand up there for a sec. I'll go to you real quick there.
Just for clarification, are we looking at these as exclusive users, or are these going to be, are you looking at them as user groups as we do for many of the city facilities?
Yeah, so a couple of the groups wanted to potentially use it exclusively. I think overall, through the analysis, we thought it would be better for groups to kind of share the facility. That way many groups could kind of benefit rather than just one. But ultimately that'll be left to, once we kind of get a little bit further in the process, there's still room to exactly determine what the best use is. If we award it to one person individually as, say, a long-term lease and they kind of run the facility completely, or if Thorold programs it kind of like how we allocate sports fields or the ice, and we sort of allocate different time slots and days of the week to different groups kind of, so everyone kind of has a fair share of it. Just before I get a little bit further too, a lot of this hinges on what the flooring surface would be. So a couple people requesting a use of a multi-use floor. Maybe Brooke, will let you talk and explain a little bit further what a multi-use floor is for the group here.
Yeah, and just to go back to Marcia quickly, I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that TCAG, while they do have admin services to help with their programming, they were willing to also share the space as well. So they have offered the option of using the space, but also working with other groups to share the space. So it wasn't like exclusivity as well. And a lot of these groups actually have expressed the same. But with a multi-use floor, instead of a turf, you get more of a rubberized surface, but also with a spring flooring. It's safer for some certain sports as well as can accommodate more sports. So with basketball, volleyball, all of those things, it kind of it doesn't limit us. Whereas maybe a turf floor or a hard floor surface, like the one that's already in place currently at James White, could be a little bit of a safety issue, as well as limiting us for potential for specific groups, as well as any other kind of flooring or any kind of space that's specific to one type of sport or type of recreational activity could be tough to keep going throughout the whole season rather than just for one part of the season. So that's kind of the floor aspect, but we would have to have somebody come in and actually do an inspection of the space and see what kind of flooring we could put in there, and what other amenities go with that, and what kind of lines and everything like that.
Thanks, Brooke. So moving on to the next group here that we've got the Thorold Soccer Club. So Thorold Soccer Club had initially expressed interest in seeing that this facility receive a turfed artificial floor, which Brooke was kind of just touching on. Their main use is they'd like to see this as a space that they could use for training throughout the winter months. So kind of in the off season when they aren't able to use the regular fields that they use in Thorold, looking for kind of a winter month training facility here. Just to note that they are really only focused on the winter here, which is why we've also kind of brought up the idea of a multi-use floor. I did also reach out to Gene just to see if he was open to the idea of multi-use rather than just turf, kind of explaining to him that turf was really only good for kind of a limited range of sports, but since his application had said that, we wanted to see if he was also open to the use of other types of flooring, such as a multi-use floor, which he said he was open to the idea of, and it would still be a suitable training space for him in the winter months if it was to be a multi-use floor surface. But basically, analysis on the Thorold Soccer Club as an organization. They're a non-for-profit Thorold Youth Organization, which is very good. Looking for an indoor facility, turf, or possibly multi-use floor. to be used for the fall and winter months. They'd be open to using the multi-use floor, as I just mentioned there. And then it also mentioned that once potentially that Thorold does go forward, if we do go forward with the turf fields in the future, that this would help even better, that he'd be able to kind of get more shoulder season months out of the turf field, and then really just be focusing on using this as an indoor training space kind of throughout the coldest months of the year, when it made the most sense to kind of be out of the weather. Does anyone through the group have any further questions on Thorold Soccer Club? Seeing none there. The next group that we had submit an expression of interest is the 128 Thorold Flying Dragons. This is the Air Cadets that are currently using Allenburg as a meeting space for their group. Really, the intent of this was that they were looking for a temporary space to meet. I'm not sure if everyone in this group's aware, but Allenburg is going to be going under some renovations in the future here, as we kind of renovate and update the facility, hoping to welcome other groups to it and work along with the Thorold Community Activities Group to kind of make it part of one of their expansions for their daycare program. So while these renovations are taking place, we're expecting the facility to have to be shut down for a series of months, and which would therefore displace the Air Cadet Squadron. So they're looking for a space that they want to potentially make a temporary home, and the arena floor could be a good use for them. So just a large open space for them to have their meetings. They would need some change rooms, possibly a little bit of storage room. They do kind of a few different things. So they have some breakout sessions where they break off into smaller groups at their meetings, which the change rooms could potentially lend themselves good to for. And then also, obviously a large open space. They do their parading, they do a couple marches, different things like that are part of their programming. So a large open space is really beneficial to their overall program. And with the James White Arena being their temporary meeting space until Allenburg renovations are completed, they kind of thought that this might be well suited for them. And then once the Allenburg's completed, they could potentially move back to their permanent home at Allenburg, which they would like to make kind of their long-term home for the future foreseeable. Anyone in the group, any questions about the Flying Dragons?
Do we, sorry, Jacob, just a question through, if I can then. Do we know how many incumbents each of these groups, like I can imagine Thorold Soccer Club, I'm okay with that one. There would be hundreds of children, and maybe even the TCAG. But do we know like how many people this could benefit?
Are you specifically asking how many people are in the Flying Dragons, or like
Well,
how many people
yes,
could
but
benefit if we were to accommodate everyone here?
no, specifically how many people are in the flying in each user group, right? Like, so does Thorold Community Activities Group have an idea of how many people would be using it, and then Thorold Soccer Club, and in each group, I would be interested to know how many people would potentially are at play there.
Yeah, I could kind of give you rough estimates just kind of through talks with people. I'd have to go back and check with the groups to kind of figure out exactly what they have. I know Thorold Community Activities Group is really bursting at the seams over there.
Okay.
So throughout the summer months, they usually have a couple hundred people for their summer camps, kids that are involved in it. And then throughout the year, they do a lot of programming for kind of a large portion of the community. Exactly what the number is, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but for sure, we could look into it and bring that number back to this committee, because I'm sure that could potentially be helpful. But they are a quite large group. Thorold Soccer Club, again, another very large group. They have kind of continually expanding numbers that they're seeing. They're experiencing a lot of growth right now. To my understanding, they have a couple hundred kids that are registered for Thorold Minor Soccer. The Flying Dragons, they're still a fairly good size, but again, quite a bit smaller than the other groups. I believe they have a couple dozen people that participate on a weekly basis with them. Again, I'd like to go back just to make sure I'm not giving a bad idea of them, but I do know kind of just through being at the hall, there is a fair number, I want to say probably like 50 or so people that go out regularly with them. For some of the other ones, they're not groups that have been part of Thorold, kind of moving down the list after this. So exactly what their numbers include, I'm not sure, but again, we can ask and make sure we bring that back at a future date for consideration.
Thank you.
Does that kind of catch what you're
Yep.
looking for there, Peter?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Then just moving on to Autism Ontario. This is a group that hasn't previously used any Thorold facility, but they're looking for a sensory space and kind of a space that they can make their own to use for programming. So a sensory room would be a space that would allow them to have a separate room to bring their sensory room, and also some office space. So through this organization, they're fairly structured. We do know that Thorold Community Activities Group is kind of looking to include something along these lines in Allenburg renovations. So we've kind of just reached out initially to the Thorold Community Activities Group to see if perhaps a sensory room might be something that could be incorporated in. Is that something that might kind of dual purpose, and then we could also kind of multi-use Allenburg in the future? Brooke, I know you kind of had a meeting separate without me there, where you kind of discussed this a little bit more with Megan from the Thorold Community Activities Group, so you might want to touch on that briefly as well too.
Yeah, so speaking with Megan from TCAG, she also has a background with special needs. So it was one of those things that we spoke about, and she mentioned that it probably wasn't even a great space for this type of room. When Janine originally reached out to Jacob, she was just looking for a space. So she was unsure kind of about James White and what it was and what it looks like. So I don't think that the sensory room itself would be the right space. We talked about potentially a change room or things like that within the arena space, but not specifically James White arena, because it would be a little bit more of a distraction area, and it wouldn't make sense for the type of room they're looking for. That's why we are kind of leaning towards trying to put them in touch with TCAG and working with the Allenburg renovations to try and include something a separate, so that they can have a room that's separate to them, and also something that TCAG can use as well.
Thank you. The next group, or sorry, any further questions about Autism Ontario before we move on? Seeing none. So the next group that we had submitted an expression of interest was ballhockey.com. Ballhockey.com primarily being focused on ball hockey, obviously. So they're looking to use the James White Arena during peak hours. So kind of prime time, as anyone can imagine, similar prime time would be kind of evenings and weekends, which is similar to prime time for ice. However, this group is looking at using this kind of year round. So prime time hours, they currently do use some space at Hagbowl Arena and run programming out of a couple different areas, kind of across Niagara and I guess all the way up to Hamilton potentially. But they do run other sports as well too. So lacrosse, roller derby, futsal, pickleball, basketball, and special events at the facility. This group looking a little bit more to run it primarily for profit. This is a for-profit group that we're looking at, and they were mainly focused on exclusively programming the facility. So more so wanting to take over the building themselves and then kind of sub-allocate it where they see fit. So if they didn't have all hours allocated to ball hockey, then they could also allocate this to some other different sports as well too. They do have some potential to duplicate some programming that is already offered through Thorold partners, such as the Thorold Community Activities Group. So Thorold Community Activities Group is starting to expand into some of these areas. They do have pickleball that they do at their current facility. They have basketball courts over there as well. And these are also some things that they're looking to expand into, kind of programming more ball hockey and other floor sports through their expression of interest as well too. So some potential to duplicate, with this being a for-profit group, kind of more so looking at exclusively taking over the facility. Was there any questions from the group on ballhockey.com specifically? No, seeing none. I'll move on to top tier training. So top tier training has a goal to partner with the city of Thorold to establish their home base as a James White Arena. They primarily are looking at installing a soccer turf field over the existing concrete floor and wanting to run in-house soccer programming year round. So unlike Thorold Soccer Club, these guys are for-profit group, but they are looking to also use this as a year-round space. The potential that they would be kind of using it and dividing up into two fields from time to time, and then kind of also being able to not only use it for soccer training with just a soccer turf field, but they did also express that if there was not an option for turf in there, they would still be interested in using the space with a multi-use floor as well too. So kind of either option has potential to work for this group. but just noting specifically that they would be duplicating some programming already offered in Thorold Minor Soccer, but could also potentially complement this through extended use kind of more fully throughout the year and with either artificial turf or multi-use floor. The next group we had was another soccer group. This is Niagara Falls Soccer Club. So this one looking for a gym rental throughout the winter months again, kind of a little bit similar to Thorold Soccer Club in that way, mainly looking for artificial turf to host indoor soccer practices and events from January, February, March, kind of winter months. Again, potential to duplicate programming already offered by Thorold partners, such as the Thorold Minor Soccer Club. However, again, also complementary potential for this group where they could expand on the demand if we were to allocate this to several different groups with either turf field inside. Any questions on any of the last two soccer groups there through the group? No, seeing none. So next group we had was Junior Badger Wrestling and / Niagara Olympic Wrestling Club. This is a wrestling group that's looking to use this facility as a training space. So overall, their hope is to find a permanent space that they could put down their wrestling mats, which would take up approximately 80 by 80 feet. So this wouldn't take up exactly the entire James White Arena. It would be looking to use kind of a portion of the floor space. They do have some potential where they could use the rest of the facility for other training, so kind of like doing different drills and stuff. But primarily, they're looking for an 80 by 80 foot spot for their wrestling mats to go down. Currently, this group is using Canada Games Park, where there already are mats available through Brock University and Sport Niagara. It doesn't really allow for a variety of uses on the exact portion that they would be using, seeing as how they want to keep the mats down permanently. But there could be some complement if there's other groups interested in kind of like floor training space with mats, so different martial arts groups. It would also depend a lot if we were to ask this group to bring their own mats and purchase their own mats for the space, or Thorold would be providing mats. It might make more sense to kind of allocate that to other groups if there was interest as well. The main interest that they had in using the Doherty Arena, or sorry, the White Arena, was that they weren't sure about the long-term viability of using Canada Games Park. The mats over there being owned through Brock University and Sport Niagara, they're not sure if that facility wants to put the mats down every year. There's kind of some, I guess, uncertainty in the future going forward if Brock will keep the mats down as many days out of the week or for as many hours. So this group really just looking to kind of have a little bit of a backup plan and maybe a home with a little bit more certainty and permanence going forward into the future. Next group that we have here is the Niagara Indoor Pickleball Association. This group's really looking for a dedicated facility, and they want something located centrally in Niagara region that they could kind of make their long-term home. So Niagara Indoor Pickleball, looking for a specific floor that they can use in the facility, multi-use floor, kind of similar to that, but they specifically want it to be lined with pickleball courts. And they want a couple other upgrades to the building as well, that they could make it a little bit more comfortable year round. So they're looking for some lighting upgrades that they were interested in, some heating, cooling, and ventilation upgrades that they would like to see for the facility. But they're really looking, if they were to get exactly what they're asking for here, that they could have a facility that could kind of be the, I guess, the, sorry, the right word here, I guess, kind of the center for pickleball in Niagara and throughout the region. They'd like to see this kind of a court, a bit of a clubhouse for them, something that they could not only use for just pickleball exclusively, but kind of more a little bit of a social club as well too. And with that, seeing a little bit of renovations to the building, like they may want to renovate some of the change rooms to kind of incorporate a bit of a clubhouse and kind of a social setting as well too. Currently, there's some duplication for other facilities kind of in Thorold, not directly through Thorold, but TCAG does have some pickleball that they are starting to offer, as well as Canada Games Park has in the past year explored offering a pickleball programming. So Canada Games Park really just having kind of beginner and drop-in pickleball sessions available for people, whereas the differentiation here is Niagara Pickleball Association is really looking for a full-time dedicated kind of clubhouse and facility that they can use for pickleball. Any questions regarding the pickleball group? Seeing none, next we have the Thorold Community Theater. So Thorold Community Theater was another group that was displaced when Trinity United Church was sold. So the two groups being the Cadets and Thorold Community Theater. Thorold Community Theater is currently looking for about 1/3 of the floor space that they could use and kind of construct a theater within the facility there. So they would be looking for some extensive renovations in order to kind of box out a theater space with a stage and dressing rooms, as well as an audience for seating approximately 150 people to come to their performances. Obviously, with kind of the asks here, it wouldn't be something that would easily be packed up. It's kind of more of a permanent renovation that they're looking for here at this time. We did suggest that they could potentially partner with the Thorold Community Activity Group over at the Bassiano Center there on Richmond Street. The space, speaking with Megan over at Thorold Community Activities Group, was originally built with intention for it to be a bit of an auditorium. So the gym space over there does have a light bar that's already in place at the facility. So this is something we'd like to kind of suggest as a potential solution, that rather than using kind of roughly 1/3 of the space, it might make sense also for them to explore other options. And I'm not sure if the Thorold Community Theater going into this was exactly sure of the other options that were available. So we kind of suggested that maybe they could use the Bassiano Center as a space with a stage, especially seeing that Thorold Community Activities Group is looking to move into this facility. That might kind of free up them from the Bassiano Center a little bit and opens up some other time that they could potentially lease out or kind of sublet or allocate to other groups such as the Thorold Community Theater. Any questions regarding Thorold Community Activity Group, or sorry, Thorold Theater as an organization? Okay. Brooke, do you want to kind of go through a little bit the other considerations here with the Knights of Columbus?
Sure. So we have the Knights of Columbus that put in a request. It is for just one event, the Harvest Fest that's taking place this September. So at this point, we're not sure if the renovations will actually start by then for James White or whatever is going to happen with James White. So it may be an option, but we also thought if the ice isn't in at that point in time at Frank Doherty, we would push them into Frank Doherty. And push is the wrong word. I apologize for lack of a better term. But maybe look to have them at Frank Doherty Arena for this event. So that is the hope, is to talk with Tim to kind of find a space that works for him. Any questions about the Harvest Fest?
I just had one question. You mentioned September 7th. So does Thorold they don't plan on having the ice in by September 7th?
We don't have a definitive ice in date as of yet. We have discussed it that it would probably be after this first week of September that we do start the ice in process, but it's not a definitive date yet.
Do we know when Canada Games will have their ice in? I'm just asking from just my own perspective of
Labor Day.
Yeah, so they could go in just after Labor Day. So we would be able to use Canada Games Park for the time being that we don't have ice in.
Okay, thank you.
Thorold Municipal Nonprofit Housing. So Joe obviously is on the call, but basically he asked for affordable housing. And we believe that that's a great option as well, but it is a long-term option. And we've talked about that this James White renovation may be just a short-term 5 to 10 year plan, and then something else may come to be. So that's kind of why it's under the other considerations, as it doesn't really align with like the parks trails situation that we were looking for. However, it is something that could be an option in the future.
Jeff, I see you with your hand up there. We want to go.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, question to Jacob or Brooke, and it relates to what you just touched upon, Brooke. Are other committees, other Thorold committees engaging in a similar exercise such that, I guess my question is about process. Are there various analyses going on by different groups, and how will that come together? Can you talk a little bit about that? Thank you.
Yeah, so this basically being an expression of interest for the James White Arena was mainly focused on Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee. Bring it forward to you guys, seeing as how you are kind of the committee that relates to sport and programming in that way. So really the expression of interest, I know it was probably presented to this group a couple months ago, but the intent of this was really to find kind of a mid short-term use for the James White Arena. So kind of looking kind of 3 to 5 years down the road, whereas some of these other things, such as Thorold Municipal non-profit housing, as Brooke had mentioned, was kind of really a longer-term plan. Obviously, housing, kind of just a timeline even for building might be a little bit more involved in kind of going through the permitting process and rounds of funding, or kind of other things that come with restructuring the facility in a more permanent and long-term way. Is that kind of naturally lend itself to be a bit more long-term than this, whereas this expression of interest was really just focused on kind of, the facility is empty right now. It's not really doing a terribly lot right now. What could we kind of do in the immediate future, and what would be kind of best to use kind of in the short term, I guess, more than long term or short to mid term. I don't know if there's plans to bring this currently to any other specific committees right now or groups within Thorold. Mostly just kind of, like I said, focusing on Parks, Trails, and Recreation, and then eventually presented through to council as well too.
Helpful, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
I think also, Jeff, if I can add something, there is the potential public uses underneath there. We did talk as a group about outside of sport, what else can we offer? So those are kind of some of the options we had come up with, that outside of just a sport related section, because there are people out there that aren't looking just for sport. They're looking for a space to come and walk or come hang out or run an event. We have a lot of events that come through my inbox every day that want to go to the Port Robinson Community Center or Allenburg Community Center. So can we offer it as an event center as well? So there is an option too. And I think even with that multi-use floor, potentially that can be an option, because we can also use that as a walking track or a warming cooling center or a conference space with that multi-use floor, because we can put tables, chairs, anything on that floor without kind of damaging as much as like a turf or other flooring.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just to open it up to the rest of the group, if there's any other questions, if anyone wants to kind of prod a little bit further into any specific group that was here, feel free to ask. Peter, seeing your hand up there.
Yeah, really good job, guys. First of all, I think that's great. I love the analysis, and thank you for all your work in doing that. And maybe through you, Chair, a question to the staff and the director, perhaps. I just want to be sure, did the city of Thorold have any expression of interest in the facility for any of its needs, per se, as a city?
So I can kind of touch on this, and Jeff might want to jump in a little bit as well too. We did kind of look at how could we use this facility. Does it make sense to really use it for storage space? I know Thorold's kind of bursting at the seams in some departments for places to store files, or just kind of different long-term storage of, housing equipment and things that we have. That could be a potential option that we could explore. Being it's set up as a kind of a recreation center right now, the arena's always kind of lent itself to recreation. It might potentially make more sense to kind of keep it that way. But yeah, there is other options that staff did look at and consider as well. So, do we keep equipment in there? Do we use it for long-term storage? Myself being the events coordinator for this facility, for the city of Thorold, is there potential to use the space if it's not kind of given as a long-term lease to a potential single group? Is it potential to run different events there? I know last year we did Earth Day for the first time ever on the Doherty Arena. Could we use it for different events like that, different gatherings? And then, kind of like how Brooke mentioned, there are some other considerations. In the event of an emergency, could it lend itself well as an evacuation center? So if we needed temporary shelter or something like that, if there was some sort of large spread disastrous event, could it be used for something else like that? There was some other considerations made. Maybe Jeff might want to touch on that a little bit further. Or Brooke there,
Mr. Chair, if I could just kind of round out the conversation a little bit, because both Peter and Jeff have identified the need to look at what a long-term plan would be for that space, and that's going to include things like soil condition testing, property acquisition, land use planning, zoning. All of those processes are going to take some time to work out a long-term plan. And because it's important, not just to our, our sports community, we're going to have to cast a fairly wide net to get public input about what else we should be considering for this property. It's an opportunity to make a long-term, bold statement, I think, for the community to establish, how this property can be used and how we can, because its location in the downtown, it can address a number of other community needs that aren't necessarily related to, sports. But we do have to be mindful in the short term of what our recreation master plan talks about and the need for, dry floor space. So it can be a win-win situation if we do it correctly. And the process to look at the long term will probably start within the next 6 to 8 months, where we start to maybe put together a committee or a team, put together terms of reference for the study, to look at all of these issues that might be incorporated, into a new building or development of this site. It could be a number of buildings, depending on how we think of it. And so that's really the game plan here. And this expression of interest is really to, find a use other than mothballing the arena for the next 3 to 5 years. And so that we can at least maybe address some of these growth-related issues that we're experiencing with some of our programming.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everyone, for comments, inputs. It looks like, it's everyone's chanting the same or echoing the same thing with the dry floor space. Now, I guess that's up to council to make the decision for what the use case will be for the next 3 to 5 years. I know Jacob and I have talked, Peter and I have talked regarding long-term use and facilities and what I would like to see, or what, I don't know if it's so far-fetched, but there's a number of things you could do with that area. And I believe the architectural assessment that was done in, I think it was 2017 or 19, or someone can correct me if I'm out to lunch on that one, but they also did include the James White Arena with the Frank Doherty Arena, saying that they're both past their expiration dates. So, I mean, that opens up a huge footprint right downtown Thorold. Road allowances between Book Depot and St. David's Road. There's things that could, like what you're saying with property acquisition. How do we know, like Kennery's, we know it's been for sale before. The little house on the corner, the little house that's between the old arena and the new arena. How would city staff go about purchasing properties for a long-term goal? How would city staff go about purchasing those properties if they were to entertain like the idea of revamping that entire area? I know Jacob and I talked, and there was a great idea with parking. Like if you had Kennery's and you filled that with underground parking to bring it up to level with where the arenas currently sit, now you've got a flat space it's a massive area. Sure, it sounds expensive, but the long-term goal is for the community, and you could have a community center with every little thing you like, every little thing that we've discussed in here, whether it's indoor turf, it's an arena, it's a swimming pool, it's a library, it's a senior center, it's endless. But Jeff, if you do put together a working team for this, I would love to be a part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's so much easier when we can get the feedback in advance from the advisory committees. And if you'd like to have a representative from your committee, perhaps that might be something you bring forward, because you have a different, I guess, opportunity, different perspective to see the community through a different lens than maybe, the staff does who work at this on a regular basis. And it's always great to get a different pair of eyes on this.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any thoughts, questions on this? I know this is probably would be one of our biggest topics as a committee between now and the next election, and through till the election after that, because it's a big centerpiece to the city and what happens. So just Marcia, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Could you tell us the timeline that the city is looking at to find a prospective short-term user?
Through Mr. Chair, I'd like to give you firm dates, but the fact is we need to put together terms of reference and decide how we're going to, roll out the plan. I would hope that this is something that we could talk about in more detail this fall and get started at it. It is a matter that was discussed in the strategic plan at a high level, and I'll have to check the operational plan, but this project will be a game changer for the community. And as I say, that we need to get started at it now because it's going to take a couple of years at least to decide what we want to do, and then maybe a couple more years after that to actually do it.
I just had a quick question. If the city was to move forward with a dry floor space and they allocated a user group between Thorold Community Activity Group and Thorold Soccer and the Knights of Columbus, obviously, and then the Air Cadets, it seems like the three could partner into their own sort of user group to utilize this space on an almost everyday basis. So if that was a consensus from council, and say they said that, how long would it take from that decision being made for it to be actually implemented? Because it is just a dry floor space. It's not, we're not building anything. We're removing, and we're just adding the flooring. So through you, Justin, that was maybe to Jeff or Jacob, but what would that sort of timeline be like if the consensus was clear and they all agreed upon, Thorold, sort of an amalgamated user group that sounds like they all have the same needs. It sounds like they all want it for the same sort of thing. And I mean, it's just up to council to say yes or no if that's what we're doing it for. What's that timeline once they say yes?
Through Mr. Chair, I think the next steps would be to take any recommendation or advice that you have this evening or at some point in the future. If we could get it tonight, that would be great. We could incorporate it into a council report on July 9th, getting authorization to have further discussions with the TCAG or whoever else to map out a game plan on what exactly it looks like, who's going to be available, what the hours of operation will be, who's going to clean it, who's going to pay for utilities, how are the user fees going to be managed. A number of those operational questions that we can't answer tonight, but we'll have to come back to council to get their final endorsement. I think unless there's anything that is earth-shattering or different than what we've presented to you, does the committee feel comfortable with us moving ahead with a recommendation to continue the conversation with TCAG and come back with a working business model about how this could play out?
Yeah, no, I agree with you because the longer we leave it, the longer it sits. Nothing gets done by, like, you don't ask, you don't get. You never will. So it is. We're the committee. That's what we're here for. Is to give our our best answer on what we feel we need in the city. Like, determine our needs and wants. And there's a need here, and there's wants, but there's also timelines. And I mean, it's up to us as a committee to say, because like you're saying, if we leave it, till the fall, then it's another year, and then it's a couple years. Where if we just make it as, like, if we look at all the recommendations, there's a use case. People there's dry facility. If you put it there, a group is going to use it. Like, we know it's going to be used, and there's interest from 3 groups that are all City of Thorold base, and I mean, that's who should be utilizing the facility, are the people from the community. So, for me, as the chair, I would 100% agree with moving forward at asking staff to start investigating with these user groups, whether it's a combination of TJC and Thorold Soccer and the cadets, or if it's them individually. But it sounds like, soccer wants it for a case, but everyone also needs it. I would feel comfortable putting that motion forward. I don't know how to word it. Justin, I'm sure you're good with words, but I also want to get the consensus from the rest of the committee, because if we leave it here, this is our last meeting until September, and we won't get really another say at it. That's all. Any discussion? Yes, Cheryl, I see you have your hand up.
Mr. Chair, I think we're on the right track, continuing discussions with TCAG with the provision that the other groups that are based in Thorold Soccer, the Air Cadets, they also are brought into those discussions so that there is some sharing. It's not exclusive to TCAG.
Yep. Thank you, Cheryl. Jeff?
I would agree with Cheryl's comments and yours as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Do I see any other hands? Peter?
I'm in the, I guess I agree with everything. That it would be nice to know that the facility wouldn't have any unused time that we could leverage some of these other people that have expressed interest. I guess I'm not sure if we could actually draft a way to say, okay, look, there's 7 days in the week, and you can apportion it, because I'd hate to have the facility just stay empty for 2 of 5 days, or 2 of 7 or 3 of 7 days. And if we have, even though, and certainly my preference is obviously local and our young community and so on and so forth. But if it was to sit empty for 2 of those 7 days, then I think we want to be thoughtful of who else can we kind of, get in there to use it, whether it be a private entity that pays a rental fee or something like that, right? Whether it be like an indoor volleyball, or whether it be the ball hockey people. I guess I don't want to exclude anybody if in the case that the facility is open. If I'm making sense, is that, what I mean by that, guys? Like, I'm just saying, if there's time there, and so, for example, sometimes the ice is rented and it's rented at 10 p.m. at night. Is this facility, could we actually think about the clock? And this facility isn't just a 9 to 5 facility, or may not even just be a 10 to 7 facility. Is this going to be, could we run it the traditional hours almost of what you would run the arena at, like maybe at 8 in the morning, or hockey practices have been 6 in the morning. Like, could we run it at 6 or 7 in the morning up till 10 or 11 at night? Like, so I guess I'm actually looking for a little bit more even dimensions on the whole thing that might be able to help us frame it a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It sounds like Jacob might have an answer for you here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think I understand what Peter's kind of saying, Mr. Chair. I think what he's asking for is a bit of an allocation priority, where maybe Thorold groups or Thorold youth groups were, say, given top priority and kind of first kick at the can for what time they would want. And then, we follow an allocation priority that says Thorold adult, other non-for-profit groups, maybe for-profit groups are then given kind of that sequence. I think it's maybe what Peter is kind of asking for there. So just to kind of explain that a little bit, because me and Brooke kind of work closely with allocation priorities for the fields and ice and kind of other facilities through Thorold that help kind of determine, who gets first, say if it's a facility that Thorold's allocating to a variety of different groups there.
Thank you, Jacob. There is also the opportunity. Thorold Secondary School is right across the street. I mean, they're always another group that would gladly come in there in the winter months, the summer, anything, obviously, maybe not the summer months, but there's also the Niagara North is playing out of there. That you could have an off-ice training facility, off-ice. There's a lot of other options other than just, but if you leave it open to our groups and then, like you said, go user case by user case, with the amount of expression of interest, I can't see it sitting open for very long. I can, go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Jacob's point. I think the other thing is that we can also look to put up mesh dividers to have multiple different sports in multiple different groups at the same time in the building as well. So that's also an option that Jeff, myself, Jacob have all talked about, that could be an option with this multi-use floor. You could have soccer running on one section, volleyball on one section, and then a dance team on the other section, right? So we kind of have options to play with when it comes to that multi-use floor, and then allocating them as 3 separate units or one whole unit within that kind of section. So I think there's also multiple opportunity to have multiple groups at the same time. The other thing I wanted to mention was that TCAG is, like Jacob said, bursting at the seams. They have waitlist on waitlist. And a lot of their groups that actually give them a hard time are their adult or older adult groups, because they have to go so late at night after 8, 9 o'clock. So is that pushing a lot of their youth programming to James White and then having more adult programming between the 5 and 9 o'clock at the Bassiano Center. So that may help them out as well. And that's kind of why we look at that, to offer more adult programming as well as older adult programming in a better time frame as well.
Yeah. There's also you could put batting cages in there. You have pitching machines. You could it's an endless list of things. It's almost like that feel like you build it, they'll come. It's almost like we just need to say get it built, but do something with it at this point. So, is there any further questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, Marcia has her hand up as well.
Marcia, go ahead.
Through you, the chair, I was just wondering, is this facility something that the city, from what you guys are talking with each other, do you guys want to be booking it? Like you book you book our fields, you book our ice, or is this something you guys would prefer you guys didn't have to book? Like, where are you guys standing from the city's perspective?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is the one thing we have to, and I don't want to be a wet blanket on this thing, but we don't have programming staff. We have Brooke Nicholson. And we have operations staff that can come in and clean up after, but we don't currently have a budget for this. So if we can utilize the TCAG, who has programming staff, who has Tai Chi instructors and those type of things at their fingertips that they can just redeploy. It's so much easier, more efficient that way, that we don't have to start from scratch. So to your point, Marcia, we are really just looking for a short-term quick fix here until we can find out exactly what we want to do in the long term. And the other side of it too is our window is 3 to 5 years. So we can't expect that we can go to council and ask them to put a couple $1 million into this building for the sake of a couple of years. We're looking for, nets and flooring and, some minimal type of improvements to provide some heat in the winter months and that type of thing. But we'll have to be careful about committing to anything that is going to be very expensive, because in order to get our money back, we'll have to look at a longer payback period.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other further comments, questions? Do we want to make a motion to have city staff start the discussions with TGAC and with, like, as we were talking there. Well, I guess you won't know unless you make a motion and vote on it, right, Justin?
And through you, Mr. Chair, if the committee doesn't want to go that route, I mean, the staff have heard all the comments and discussion from here as well, and they can take that and, put some of that maybe in their report or to council, unless the committee does want to make something formal, want to pick one or not. It's up to them.
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing on the one hand an openness to supporting those Thorold specific groups at the top of the list, with an openness or willingness as well to to allocate time to what remains to utilize the facility as much as possible. So I'm in favor of a motion generally supporting this, with the taking into account the good analysis that has been done and we've discussed, with, as I said, prioritizing the top few entities on the list, while being open to filling up any remaining capacity as was discussed. I don't think we're in a position to rule out anybody yet. And as Jeff and Peter and others have mentioned, we still need a little bit more information to be in that position. So that's my take on it.
Well, like I said, if we put a motion forward now, they'll hear it July 9th. If we don't, we leave it to their discretion to make the decision, and we will have to wait till September, and then possibly October before it's heard if nothing is discussed. So
I think the motion might be a good idea, at least preliminary, to say that we've identified user groups, right? And that we have a kind of some idea of what to do, and that maybe the motion can be just that, and that city staff can sort of work out some terms with these user groups.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of pushing it so it gets dealt with sooner than later, because, like you said, it's only for a small window of time before it's only going to be used for. So. Just the wording of the motion would be difficult to come up with. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I understand how kind of uncomfortable it is to kind of throw your weight behind something that you don't have all the information for. So perhaps if you are considering a motion tonight, maybe you include an opportunity to bring back what the deal is or what arrangements we were able to negotiate, so that you can see whether or not it meets the intent of your support. I think there was some really good conversation here that our staff can take away about, how important it is not just to have, the costs covered or, things booked, but to have it used, and to have it used by people that are, part of the community, and becomes a real public space. So, and right now you don't have those details. So if you are to consider a motion of some kind, perhaps you include some type of bring it back to this committee before the final decision goes to council. I'm not sure if that makes it any easier, but it gives you a little bit of assurance that things aren't going to go sideways after it leaves here.
Yes, go ahead, Justin.
So through you, Chair, with all the discussion, this is what I think I have so far. That council directs staff to work out a terms of reference with interested user groups for the James White Arena, and that staff report back options to this committee.
Yeah. So do we give them, within that, do we say which one we're more in favor of? I feel like that, Because for myself, I'm more in favor with the, the Thorold Community Activity Group, the Thorold Soccer, and the Air Cadets. But it sounds like all three of them need somewhere, and they need somewhere in fairly short order. But
sorry, through you to the chair. I don't know if you necessarily need to pick a group. I think your comments and general discussion of what you've been leaning toward can be taken from staff and incorporated into their negotiations, their talks, and their report. Unless you do want to get specific, of course, it's completely up to.
I'll leave that in Jacob's capable hands. I feel he understands it. I did see a hand up there. Jeff, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to go a little bit more specific than just interested user groups to reflect our discussion and also to reflect the actual analysis that we've gone through. There was I'm not suggesting it's finalized or that we have all the details. We agree that we don't, but I think that the motion should include the idea that what we're supporting is so far anyway, what we reflected in the analysis that was put before us tonight.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Because if you leave it open, I mean, obviously Jacob will tell them what we were in favor of, but unless it's in writing, sometimes it gets. So I'd be comfortable with putting what we had discussed here about the dry floor space as our intention, or as a committee. That's what we have all come to an agreement on, that, that's our intended use of the facility. Peter? Anyone? No? Oh, I thought I saw a hand raised there.
Sorry, Chair, it's me.
Yes, Marcia.
My hand was up.
Go for it.
Going with your motion, could we not just use the analysis that was provided to us? The top three totals were the three that we've discussed today, which are Soccer Club, TCAG, and the Air Cadets. So I think that would meet your criteria that you were looking for, being a little more specific, and it goes with what the city has prepared for us and their analysis of those user groups.
Yeah, definitely. That would be an easier way of putting it. Justin looks like he's working hard to write something over there.
Okay, so instead of with interested user groups, I'll replace it with the top three candidates on the list instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that council directs staff to work on a terms of reference with, and then I'll list the top three groups that were listed there, and to report back options to this committee.
Yeah. Because I think regardless of what group gets it, of the top two, or obviously the three, the cadets, they have a time that looks like they have it. They're Monday and Wednesday. They're 6 to 10. Looks like they can fill that for as long as they have the facility. So they'd be more along the lines of just being probably a seconder to whoever ends up using and operating. But I'm good with that.
So, Mr. Chair, if that's the end, we just move her and second her and to vote on it then.
Okay. Do you have the wording? Maybe put it on the screen, or
I'll type it up. Hold on.
or you can read it out. And
Yeah, just 1 second here. Just make sure I got the name of the three groups here. Okay. That council direct staff to work out a terms of reference with the Thorold Community Activities Group, Thorold Soccer Club, and the 128 Thorold Flying Dragons Royal Canadian Air Cadet Squadron. We're going to turn around that, and to report back options to the committee.
Yeah, I'm good with that. All right. Do we have a mover and a seconder? I guess I can move one.
I'll second.
Jeff, seconder. And call to a vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, everybody. This was a very lost for a word here. Yeah, very productive. Very good. Very good. Thank you, Rich. Very productive, special. I had the special meeting in my head and I couldn't figure out what the word was. But very productive. Thanks for calling the meeting here, Justin. I'm going to move on to our roundtable discussion, if there is any. I feel like we just had a roundtable discussion. I don't know if there's anything else that anyone has. I see Jeff, your hand up.
Yeah, I would like to, I'd like this committee to engage in discussion in the fall about trails, not taking away from all the important other discussions we've had in the first 2 years, but I do, if we look at the master plan, which was, you know, the city has confirmed their commitment to invest in the development and maintenance of parks, trails, and recreation facilities. So I think that this committee is well suited to supporting the city in that endeavor. And with that in mind, I'd like, through you, Mr. Chair, to city staff, I'd like to request from staff that they come back to us with detailed information about master plan recommendations TR1 and TR2 on page 87. So more specifically, TR1 has to do with safety and accessibility audit of all existing trails. That was a recommendation in the master plan. The city staff work on this audit, as I said, of safety and accessibility of the trails and identify specific safety concerns. So that's what I would like them to come back to us at, with an update as detailed as possible in the fall, and engage the committee in a discussion about that. And maybe we may even be able to help them prioritize some of those concerns or safety issues. And relatedly, what I call TR2, recommendation TR2, where staff establish a series of designated rest stops along the trails. Again, I'd like staff to provide us with an update on that work and where they're at with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Jeff, I'll second that for sure. If you want to put it into a motion, that's amazing. Through you, Chair, I was going to ask maybe Mr. Baldoni, but I think he's signed off. So maybe Mr. Holman, if you can, just for information, and it's just, I'm noticing an incredible amount of litter all over the like in certain areas, right? It just seems to be litter, and some of it is general litter. Some of it's also dog feces litter. Does the city staff have a program around additional? I'm not sure if I'm not eloquent enough to say, but garbage cans. Do we have enough garbage cans out in the city, properly placed in certain locations where we seem to have a bunch of litter in the city building up? And I don't know if you guys have regular routines, inspections of these places, or if there's a place for us to sort of submit maybe problem areas. And this is just noticed as I'm driving through the city and looking around, but I seem to see a whole bunch of litter around that. That's one. And then secondly is the construction, and this may not be our committee, but I just feel like it relates to sidewalks and stuff like this. And when they're doing construction along and they're digging up the road, and then they leave gravel everywhere, you can't even ride your bike along the sidewalk anymore because they don't clean up the gravel that they use from the construction. So like, I'm not sure if operationally, maybe this isn't us, but I'll just throw it out there because I thought Mr. Baldoni was still going to be here, and I think he's the operations guy, but he left, I guess. So I just want to throw that out there as well. Just a couple of those are a couple small things that I think we can maybe, I just wanted to point that out. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So going back to Jeff, did you want to make that motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I move that in the coming months, city staff engage our committee in a detailed discussion about master plan recommendations, TR1 and TR2.
So we will need a mover and a seconder. I think we already had Peter as a mover
I'll second it.
and Marcia as a second. Thank you. And all in favor?
Yes.
Yeah, aye.
That will be carried. Thank you. Very productive meeting today. Any other discussions for the round table? Okay, seeing none. Like to, our next meeting will be,
Sorry, I did have my hand up. Sorry, I couldn't
sorry,
get off
Marcia,
mute.
your
I
hand's not
apologize.
coming up on my screen here. Go ahead.
Could we have an update on the dog park? I am on the working group, but I haven't had any correspondence. Could we get an update and the expected opening date of the dog park?
Is there anyone city staff that has that now, or is that?
Through Mr. Chair, I don't have a specific date yet. There's still some work to be done with respect to, I think they were working on the paving, but there are some benches that have to be installed, some signage recognizing the donors, and that all has to be put in place probably within the next 6 weeks. Marcia, I would say, was probably the best guess. But Mr. Baldoni would have more accurate information than that.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions? Okay, so the next meeting. Yep.
Sorry.
Jeff,
My
go ahead.
apologies. One quick thing. I was a little surprised to hear that a decision was made that we wouldn't have meetings this summer. So I don't know who can speak to that, perhaps yourself, Mr. Chair, but was there a rationale? What was that rationale? And I guess my main question would be, why wasn't the committee able to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'll leave that for Justin. Go ahead, Justin.
So through the chair, this committee voted on that schedule at the end of last year.
To take the summer off?
Yes. Because that was what they did the previous year, and that was the proposed meeting schedule, and that's what this committee passed.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think even the previous year we didn't meet in the summer either. And I think previous committees, it's just it's a trend, I believe, with the committees and the months of July and August, because I think August long weekend, the Monday falls on the same day, and I believe the July end of long weekend falls on the same Monday. So,
okay, thank you for clarifying.
No problem. Although you're right, though, we are at Parks and Trails. You think we'd be meeting in the summer rather than the winter. But that doesn't mean we can't have a special meeting at any point. Like, this is a special meeting, and obviously was well needed because we're almost an hour and a half into it. So at any point there is a time that you want to call a special meeting, we can, albeit it can be a virtual meeting. It can be, even if it's something for little as 10 minutes. We did do that last year with the opening of the pool. We had a meeting and it took about 7 minutes, and we got the pool open 2 weeks early. So if there is anything throughout the course of the summer that comes up that you believe we need a special meeting for, we're more than likely we can have it at the drop of a hat. So to keep in mind. Okay, any further questions or discussions for roundtable? All right. So the next meeting is held on September 9th, 2024. Congratulations, Marcia. We'll see you there as our next VP. And everyone, have a very good summer. There's no further business. The meeting is adjourned at 7:55 p.m.